Hey everybody, welcome to Go Bold. My name is Jody Tariwala and I'm your host. And today we're coming to you from Canadian Forces Base Esquimalt, and we are close to the Z Jetty. And this area of the base has some of the auxiliary or support vessels which facilitate the operations here for the Royal Canadian Navy. Specific to this episode, we are going to be talking about the Large Tugs, which help the Royal Canadian Navy. And the class is called the Glen Tugs. And specifically, we are going to be visiting Glendale, which is one of the two tugs that are right behind me. These tugs are instrumental in helping the Navy because the Navy ships are multi-billion-dollar vessels. And so you want to be careful with them. And the Glen Tugs help the Navy do what they need to do in terms of getting in and out of port efficiently and safely. In addition to that, there are a lot of secondary duties that these tugs perform. So welcome to this episode, and I hope you enjoy this visit with the Glen Tugs. So hey everybody, I am joined by Tim Doherty, who is the ship's master, or that's the equivalent of a captain.
Yes,
I guess.
Same thing, yeah.
Right, right. Tim, thank you so much for joining me on Go Bold. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, well, thank you very much for coming down. I'd like to show you the ship and tell you a little bit about the King's Harbour Master organization that we're all part of.
Yeah, well, I think that's a perfect place to start. So, King's Harbour Master, what exactly is that organization? And it is, you are operating here at Canadian Forces Base Esquimalt. So, how do you fit into the whole construct of the, auxiliary fleet support services side in relation to the Royal Canadian Navy?
Yeah, so the base here provides a number of services that supports the Canadian fleet here on the West Coast. And one of those services is the auxiliary fleet. So the auxiliary fleet is a number of smaller vessels that we operate locally here in the harbor. Sometimes we go on longer trips. And we do things like move ships around in the harbor when they're required, either helping them get alongside, or if they're not able to turn on their engines for the day, if it's too awkward, then we'll provide the tug services to move them. We also move barges around the harbor, support equipment. We have several large pieces of support equipment that help us provide support to naval operations here on the coast. And that all falls under the auxiliary fleet. The auxiliary fleet is part of an organization, very traditional name was Queen's Harbour Master. Now, of course, it's the King's Harbour Master, and the King's Harbour Master overall responsible for operations here. So that includes fire services, emergency services, and also environmental protection services, and a certain amount of administration of the harbor.
Right, right. Oh, very interesting. And so, in terms of the auxiliary fleet, I think it is safe to say that without tugs, the Navy probably would not have the ability to operate as it needs to, or perhaps as efficiently as it should.
Well, we like to say that the ships can't get to sea without us.
Right.
That might be stretching it a bit, but certainly these are strategic assets, these large frigates and the supply ships that we have. And it's important in very enclosed space like a harbor that we can get them alongside safely, where they can then do their refit work and their resupply work and so on.
Right.
And really that's what the auxiliary fleet does. We provide the motive power to bring them into the harbor and then stop them and then maneuver them alongside jetties in ways that are safe for everyone.
Right, right. And so you are, as we mentioned, you are the ship's master for the Glendale, the tug right behind us. Tell me about this type of tug, and what is your typical kind of daily routine? And do you stay just local to the harbor, or can you go further afield?
I'd say 90% of the time we're local to the harbor. We work in the harbor, yeah. So this is the Glendale. This is our naval large tug, the large tugs that we have right now. There are new ones coming, but this one is the Glendale. The one you can see further aft is the Glendyne, sister ships.
Right.
They are tractor tugs, and we use those to put lines up on ships and barges, certain things, and we then tie up close together to whatever we're moving, and yes, we do move them around. It's one of the classes of tugs that we have. Mm-hmm. We also have, you can see on the other side of the harbor there, the jetty, you can see a smaller tug, that's the Tillicum, and that's a traditional West Coast tug. We use that in conjunction with the Glendale to move the larger ships. She's also capable of moving smaller barges and so on.
Right.
Right across from us, actually, if you just want to come down a little bit, we have the YDT 250. This is a crane barge, steam-operated crane barge. I think one of 2 left in North America.
Wow.
It's a very effective piece of kit. Yes, it has been around for quite a while, but then again, it works perfectly well for what we require. We use this to lay, you see these orange, or these yellow things here, these are clumps. We'll put those in the water, anchor chains to them, and then put buoys out for ships to tie up to. We also use her to move things around the harbor. Got a nice flat deck here, so that's 250. Behind you, the 3 barge, which has a number of coils of wire on it. We actually use this, we wrap a ship in wire, and then we flash electrical pulses through it, and that reduces the electromagnetic signature of the ship.
I believe that's
right?
called
That's
degaussing.
It is called degaussing, exactly,
Right.
yes. So, and there are other, you can see across, small pup tug there. That's the Parks, or Lawrenceville. We have 2 of those, Lawrenceville and Parksville.
Okay.
And we use those for moving much smaller barges or assisting with the moving of the larger barges like the YDT 250. Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
well, now as we are focused in this episode on the Glen tugs, specifically your tug, the Glendale, if you don't mind, as we are outside here, how about we just kind of walk the length of your tug, and if you could point out some of the more notable aspects of the tug.
okay, well, I think probably the first thing you notice about a tug is the big rubber bumpers.
Right.
Okay, this is because tug work is a contact sport. You know, it's kind of like an adult version of bumper boats. Right? And so, yeah, this is, I suppose the closest thing people might be familiar with is it's the same sort of density of rubber as you would find on an aircraft, like a large aircraft tire, right? So we have, as you can see, all the way around the ship, we have these large bumpers, and that is exactly that reason. It's a bumper we bring when we come alongside. We want to make sure that we don't have steel on steel. We want to make sure we don't create any damage. Often we're coming along ships that are at sea. They're moving through the water. We have to match their speed, touch up close to them, put a very large line up to the ship, and that allows us to move it around. So that's probably the most noticeable thing.
You know, one of the other things that I noticed just before you continue, Tim, is the actual shape of the tug goes narrower the further up. The higher up you
that's
go.
another thing that is true about tugs. I guess, you see, very heavy steel, heavy construction. That's because we are often pushing against things.
Right.
And we don't want the hull to, get damaged, our hull. So very heavy construction. It's a construction that is unique to tugs, the way it's done. You'll also notice, yes, it's built a bit like a triangle.
Right.
And the reason for that is when the side of the tug is touching the side of the ship, often ships, it'll be another 20 feet, 30 feet above us, the top of the deck of the ship, and sometimes it curves over top of us.
Right.
So we have to be able to fit under the flare of the ship, right? So you don't want things hanging out that can bang against the ship, right? That's why we're so wide. Tugs are wide, short, deep, because we need the propulsion to be deep in the water so we can get the maximum grab as it turns.
Okay.
And a lot of open deck space for lines and winches and so on. Smaller space for the actual operating and controls. We only actually have 2 people working up there when we're in the wheelhouse. One steersman and one mate or master.
Right. And that's really interesting. So, you know, what is the typical crew complement for the Glendale?
Similar, so Glendale carries a little bit more crew than you would typically find on a tugboat, but we have a master, a mate, a chief engineer, and 3 deckhands, one of whom acts as the oiler and assists the chief engineer.
Okay.
Right? On the smaller tugs or on regular tugs, you might only find a master, a mate, an engineer, and a deckhand. So, but yeah, so we operate with 5.
Okay.
If we go outside the harbor on a long trip, we operate with 6. If we go outside the harbor on a long trip, we add an extra 3 people on board, a cook, another engineer, and another mate, and the mates stand watches, 6-hour watches, 1 on, 1 off, so to speak.
Right.
So, yeah, so it's a small crew, very professional crew. The sailors are trained to work the lines individually, because frankly there isn't enough space for a lot of extra people. Right.
Right. And you mentioned that I believe typically you are in the harbor, but you can go out to sea, as you said.
Yes, we do. We do. In a regular working year, COVID, different kind of thing. Regular working year, we'll do 3 to 4 away trips, which will range anywhere from 3 to 5 days a piece. We'll take one of these large barges up to another harbor, and we'll check the anchoring systems for the naval buoys that are up there. We have naval buoys in various locations around the coast that the ships can go to and tie up to. Right. It's like mini harbors, as it were, for them. And we have to go up and do a regular maintenance on those things. So we'll take the large barges. Right. We also do some away trips that are maybe a day and a half, where we'll take a ship to another harbor, say for refit, over to Vancouver or Victoria, or some of the other harbors around the coast. So those would be shorter trips.
We're kind of looking at some of the aspects of your tug. You mentioned it's very strong steel. You mentioned this rubber bumper that's all the way around. I'm looking up at it. I see very, very large spotlights up above your bridge, I guess. And then also, I think further aft, if I recall correctly, you also have a fire hose. So I guess there's we could probably start walking that way, but I guess there's also that capability.
Yes, there is. We have they call them monitors. It's a very large fire hose, fire nozzle, I suppose, that we can use. We can be a secondary firefighting capability for the fleet. We can go alongside a ship and provide hose water down onto the ship to cool the outside, or we also actually carry a salvage pump, and we could connect our own pumps on board to the ship if that was required. Right. But yes, we have a fire hose, which if we walk down, we can see it. You can't see here, we have a large winch on the front for working lines. Looking up, we have a couple of spotlights, very large spotlights, which we can use to shine down on the water or on things at night if we're coming up to it, to put a line up. We can identify, yes, this is the correct vessel. Yes, that is the place we want to put the line. We can also, if there's debris in the water, we operate typically where we're comfortable operating very close to shore. Tugs get into small places and we pull things out. And at night, if there's no lights around, this is critical to our operations, that we be able to see everything. Right. Just come aft here. You might actually have to come right around. You can see right up at the top near the flag there, that's our monitor, and it puts out quite a substantial amount of water, which we can then use to hose down things.
Right. So it's wonderful additional capability for
That's correct,
the sub,
yes.
or sorry, for the tug here. And then in addition to that, you also have a little inflatable boat as well.
Yeah, this is our working boat. It also doubles as a kind of rescue boat if someone were to fall in the water, or we saw someone in the water. We can launch that boat and go over to pick them up out of the water.
Right. I'm just going to focus in on the boat that's on your sister tug there.
Yeah.
So that's the one there.
So with a little 4-speed, I think it's a 28 horsepower engine on it. So pretty useful. And of course, like any tug, we have a very large winch, which you can see there, with a 2-inch extra special flexible steel wire rope towing wire. And behind that, it's called an H-post, which helps guide the wire and keep it lined up more or less fore and aft. And behind that, you can see the big towing hook, which we can use if someone sends a line to us, we can hook it onto that hook. That's one thing we can do, and then we can tow using their line.
So it's, perhaps deceptive when somebody would think about a tug. You just think, oh, you're moving a ship around, and that's the bulk of your job. But there's multiple roles that you can do, and I think you mentioned even spill response, I guess.
Yeah, so the King's Harbour Master, part of the organization, is the environmental EPO, in the Environmental Protection Organization, and we will support them. We have a number of vessels, smaller vessels, that we use to do environmental protection work, either dealing with spills or helping prevent spills. We have a number of large plastic booms which we can put in the water around a ship or around a barge if there is a problem, or we often put them around them to avoid any potential problems, to contain any oil that might spill. So we have that organization, and our tug assist them from time to time. We do exercises from time to time where we go out into a larger ocean area where it's not like a harbor and the smaller vessels may struggle. We could come out to help them, although that's not one of our primary roles. There is an entire organization within the King's Harbour Master that really specializes in that.
Right. Well, let's take a quick tour of the exterior of your ship while we're on board.
Okay, we can do that, absolutely.
I'll follow you.
Okay.
Cheers.
We might as well start up at the bow here.
Sure.
So up on the bow, we have our deck winch, or windlass, we call it. And the windlass is what we use both to operate our anchors if we have to drop anchor, but also you'll notice these big drums on the side. And if we need to put a line up to a ship and then tighten it down very closely, we will use this big winch here to do that. So I just sort of point out, this is the standard sized line that we would use for tugboat work.
Okay.
You see? One of the things really, really important to us is just how strong is the line, and it writes it right on it. This has a safe working load of 190,000 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Right. Or actually that's the braking strength, 190,000 pounds. So that gives you some idea of the amount of tension that we can put on the line or before it has any serious concern. So most of our working lines are about that size.
Okay.
So, and that's, just typical of tug work. Where you see very large, we call these bits. And as you can see, very, very heavy construction. Again, like our main bit up forward, our tow post up there. You can see very, very heavy construction. This is all because when we're working with like a frigate or an AOPS or a larger vessel, we're going to be exerting tons and tons of pressure on the line to move it around. And we want to make sure that all of our fittings are able to handle that kind of weight.
Right.
So,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Forward, we've got a couple of working deck lights, big LED lights up here. Up higher, you can see the spotlights. And of course, we're required by Transport Canada regulations to carry life rafts. We have enough for 20.
Right.
Right. Which is like double the crew.
Right. Right.
Or double our maximum crew. I just work along the side here. It's called a heaving line. The lines that we use to work with a ship are, as you saw, quite large. So we can't just throw them up to the ship. So what we do is we send a messenger, basically a heaving line like this, and it's got a little called a monkey's fist, although it's not got anything in it actually. It's just rope.
Sure.
And we'll send one of these up. This is the heavy end that goes up on deck. Then they pull it and we attach it to the end of the working line, and then we pass that hand over hand up to them. So.
Right
on. These are a couple of examples of what we call bridles. This is a new one. This is a bit older. Yes, I know it looks rusty, but it's perfectly fine. It's just, a bit of surface debris. When we are towing something behind us on the big winch, a barge or, a large item, we put bridles up. So at the end of the winch, I'll show you that in a minute, we put two legs of wire that go out, stretch up, and go on either corner of whatever we're pulling. Those are called bridles. These are good examples of the bridle, 1 3/4 inch and 1.5 inch here. So, and they're of various lengths depending on the size and width of whatever we're attaching them to. So if it's not that wide, then we use a slightly shorter legs on the bridle.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure. Interesting.
Down into the ship itself, we have an engine room that produces a substantial amount of heat when we're operating. So we have a whole fan system, very large fan system, HVAC through the ship to try and keep everything cool. We don't actually have AC on board. Generally, we don't require it.
Right.
But we do have a heating system.
Right.
But honestly, when we're running, the engine produces quite a lot of heat, the engines. And so we don't use a lot of heat because we produce a lot of heat, actually.
Right, yeah.
Okay, this is the big working winch.
Okay.
With originally the ship came with about 2,000 feet of wire, of this 2-inch wire here, and we obviously can roll it in or out with power. And at the end of it, it's kind of hard to see, but right down there, we have a thing called a spelter socket. Everything in the marine world has got weird names. Right, so spelter socket, and that's what we would put one of these big shackles. This is a range from about I think there's a couple of 15s, 15 ton, 17 ton, 21 ton, 25 ton, a couple of 35 ton shackles there. That's the safe working load for the shackle. And we attach that to the end of the spelter socket, and it would feed out this way over the stern. And then we've got a couple more shackles would go on to the bridle, and then that would go up to the ship. Right. So I have a few more working lines here. And this is a tow hook. We don't actually use it that much in our operations. We don't use it in the harbor operations. We occasionally might use it for towing operations, but a lot of tugs do use their tow hooks. The Vil tugs over there don't have a winch on the back, but they do have a tow hook. They would actually put the end of their tow line on the tow hook and then run it up to the ship. So slightly different approach.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, this has been fantastic. It's a lovely exterior tour of the Glendale, and yeah, totally looking forward to seeing a little bit on the inside.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Let's go take a look.
Thank you. And here we are in the engine room of the Glen Tug. Saeed,
Hello.
it's wonderful to be in your office. Thank you for joining me on Go Bold.
Yeah, most welcome.
Tell me a little bit about what it means to be a chief engineer on a Glen Tug here.
Yeah, basically I belongs to the deep sea as an engineer. So I have a deep sea ticket and a marine ticket. And I born and raised in Pakistan. So I work with a lot of international companies.
Sure.
So finally, I got an offer to be in Canada. So I came down to here.
Fantastic. Well, and now you are the chief engineer on the Glen Tug, specifically Glendale, which we're on now. This is your office. Tell me a little bit about.
Yeah, this is not my office actually. This is my operation.
For sure.
Operation control room.
Right.
Is an engine control room, and then we have a same control system in wheelhouse too.
Right. Okay.
When I satisfy with both engines, then I switch over to control system to the wheelhouse.
And then you go up there.
Yeah. Right. And then I go up, and then I stay there until any troubleshooting. Then I'll come down and take a look.
Gotcha.
There's an alarm system there. There's an alarm system upstairs. The same alarm system there too.
Okay.
Those alarm system shows up what deficiencies of engine, low blood pressure, or maybe some kind of high temperature and these type of things. So the awareness, there's an alarm goes on in wheelhouse and as well as here.
Right.
So then I just acknowledge. As soon as I acknowledge, then I can find those one red, then I can solve that issues.
I see. Tell me about the engines on board this tug.
Yeah, we have two main engine, and is a Ruston Pixman is collaboration with the German machinery and as well as British. So I worked this engine is a Ruston Huntsby long time ago, about is a built in 1954, something like that. The same engine doesn't make any difference, but it's large, large. It's a small. This is the small engine. I work with large engine. I know that all engines about the fuel pump and indicating cock, injectors and the bearings and a lot of troubleshooting. I did that too, and I one of the bushes was wrong a long time ago. They always worn out and they're gone, and then I made a designing for that bushes, and they're very successful. Then still I saw the same design they are using. There's not any trouble, any problem at all. It's working very good. We have two engines, and there's a 900 each horsepower for, and the shaft is driving from the forward part.
Okay.
Mostly the shaft goes to the aft part in the most common vessels.
Right.
But this vessel is a German design, is a tug, very rapid movement. So they have some propeller system in the forward part.
Let's go take a look at that.
Forward part. So they all both shaft driving individual propeller. This is the propeller, which goes underneath of water. There's a fin propeller. They do like this. They spin all of them, and then they make some more speed. So then control system is a pneumatic hydraulic system in it.
Okay.
So the captain or whatever is the skipper. So then they use those both propellers. So this propeller is called White Schneider, is a German made.
Right.
And this really is amazing. This is an amazing machine.
And so to orient ourselves, we are at the forward portion of the tug, near the bow.
Yeah.
As the master has shared with us, and you just have as well, it's essentially a front-wheel drive vehicle.
Yeah, this is exactly the front propeller drive system in it.
Right on.
So they're more very common in German tug and World War II. They invented on that time.
Right.
This really is very effective. They spin in one spot, port and starboard side, and starboard port side rapidly.
Right. And that allows the tug to pivot very quickly and be very
quickly,
maneuverable.
and then they can sideways too.
Right.
To move sideways. Otherwise, other boat doesn't have those opportunity for that. But this one have this. They can walk right and left.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Saeed. I appreciate you showing us the engine room of the Glen Tugs.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then, we are in auxiliary fleet.
Right.
And we have a horsepower.
Yeah, you've got horsepower, that's for sure. Awesome. Thank you, Saeed.
Okay, thank you much.
Well, good morning.
Hi, Tim. Thank you. So here we are on the bridge of the Glendale tug. I would love for you to give us a description of this is your office.
Yes, yes it is. Yeah. So this is where the operations take place. This is how we direct the tug. And I'm just going to turn down, the radio here. Radios are obviously something that are critical to our operations. We have a number of agencies that we have to talk to, other ships that we're going to be, working with. We have a controlling organization, KHM Ops, here in the harbor. That is the King's Harbor Master, and Ops is the operations room there. They're the ones that direct us in terms of where we need to go and what jobs we'll do.
Right.
So let me describe a little bit of what you've got up here. We have the majority of things that you would see on any any vessel, operating in the ocean. So we have a couple of radars here at each end. We've got radios here, a depth sounder. We have a chart plotter. This actually displays an electronic chart, which is attached to both GPS. So we get a constant every, 30 seconds or so, we get updated on our location. Actually, I think it's a bit faster, like 5 seconds. And it also shows our track and so on. And that's this chart here, electronic chart. This is actually a monitor. The main one is actually back aft on a bridge. And we have a couple of other radios, and we have this is called an AIS. This is this shows the identities, the names of all the ships that are around us. So it's an automated identification system. And yes, we have a number of antennas up top. So, and of course, because we are a fairly traditional vessel, we have paper charts as well, back to the old days of Captain Cook and everything.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah.
Good redundancy, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah. We like to have redundancy in the marine world. So this is called a tractor tug. and it has an unusual propulsion system, one that was developed largely for harbor tugs, or tugs that do a lot of maneuvering close to ships in harbor, where you have to work lines around the ship, and it's tight quarters, so you need a very, very maneuverable vessel. It was developed, I think, just prior to the Second World War, actually, although you really didn't see the manufacture of Voigt Schneider is the name of the type of drive.
Okay.
A Voigt Schneider drive, and developed in Europe, still very, very popular in Europe. You don't see it that much in North America here, but we have two of them here in the harbor.
Okay.
So what's unusual about it is it's front-wheel drive. We actually have two thrusters that sit just forward on the ship here.
Okay.
Most ships, the propulsion will be back at the stern. Ours is up at the front. The other thing that's unusual about it is that it works kind of like the way an airplane wing works. We actually have two rotating discs, and there are on each disc there are 5 blades that stick down into the water vertically, and they spin. And as they spin, because they're shaped like an airplane wing, they you've ridden in the car, you put your hand out the window and you kind of lean your hand and it blows it up and blows it down.
Sure.
Well, this is basically the same thing, but we adjust the angle of attack vertically.
Okay.
And because it's spinning through the water, that creates movement over the wing, and that creates a low pressure zone on one side, a high pressure zone on the other, right? And in our case, when they're spinning in their normal configuration, that low pressure zone is on the front by the bow,
Right.
and the high pressure zone is on the back wing pushing forward. So it literally creates lift that pulls us through the water.
Right.
So that's how it works.
Right.
And we can, depending on, when on your hand, when you tilt it, you get more lift or less lift. We tilt the wing a bit more and we get more thrust forward, or we can reverse the spin and we can get the thrust backwards, right?
Right. So it gives you a lot of maneuverability.
It gives us a lot of maneuverability. This is also our steering, right? And this is
Right.
what's unusual about the Voigt Schneider, is that not only, so if we're in a neutral position, then the thrust is along the center line.
Right.
But we can adjust where the angle of attack takes effect on that circle. So instead of being directly in the front, we could actually say, well, we want the angle of attack to happen slightly off to the side.
I see.
Right? And if it's slightly off to the side, then the thrust not only is forward, but also it causes the bow to turn, right? Because now we're pulling the bow this way,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the more we adjust where that angle of attack happens, the more the bow spins, or the faster it will spin.
Sure.
Right? And we do that. This is how we adjust the angle of attack with these two sticks.
Okay.
This is how we adjust where the angle of attack happens with the ship's wheel,
I see.
right? So this creates movement forward or aft. This creates movement on the bow sideways,
Right.
right?
And then the levers to my left.
So that is how we control the initial amount of, or how fast the blades spin.
I see.
Right, so we set the rotation speed normally at about 700 or 750, revolutions. So they're spinning at, say, 750 revolutions. That's the engine, the spin speed, and then we adjust angle of attack to get thrust, and then we adjust where the attack is happening in terms of relation to the center line to create the bow to turn.
Wow.
So it's a really unusual drive system. It takes a little while to learn how to do it. Took me 5 years before they would let me be a master.
Wow.
I spent 2 years as a relief chief mate, and then I spent 3 years as a chief mate on the boat, basically just doing the driving under the captain's direction, the master's direction.
Right.
And so it took me basically 5 years to get familiar enough with the whole operation of the ship and the lines before I was actually allowed to be a master of the vessel. So to start the engines, it's fairly straightforward. We just hit the stop buttons a couple of times to make sure that they're set properly down below. We check here. I have light on these two indicators which indicate that I have bridge control, not engine room control. And then we just hit the start buttons. And then we wait a few seconds. It takes a few seconds for the interlocks to unrelease and the oil pressure to start to build up. And what we're waiting for is that little rumble. Right? And we can look in these dials, we can see it, see the revs will come up. And then, because we have locked the helm and the thrusters as a safety, we unlock. They're straight mechanical. It's a pin. Make sure that it won't move. Turn the light on so we can see. And once I'm comfortable that the pilot's next door and everyone is in their positions, then we can bring the revolutions up and we'll be ready to maneuver.
Right on. Yeah. Excellent.
So we're just going to go out into an open space in the harbor here. Just take us out in the middle here, and I'll demonstrate how the tug is maneuvered, how it responds to the ship's helm.
Wonderful.
So just take us over to heading towards D jetty there. Yeah.
Right beside F jetty?
Yeah, where the little boats are there, little gray boats. I just want to get a little sea room on here. And you can come up to 6. Deck bridge, just warn everyone, we're going to do a couple of hard turns here. Deck, did you get that?
Yeah, Roger.
So just in a minute or two, we'll be doing a couple of hard turns just to demonstrate how the ship turns. Might be a couple of rolls.
Roger, thank you.
Okay. Oh, did I write 12? Okay, 12. Okay, so Carolyn, what I'd like to do is just knock it to 0 and go 8 away.
Right now?
Yeah, right now. So our propulsion is at the forward part of the ship, so this is basically like front wheel drive. So as you can see, if we put helm on, we actually end up turning in the length of our hull, and we pivot around the back of the ship here. So just take us around and then bring her back the other way. So you can see how we spin. Tugs are extremely maneuverable. It's designed to do that. Right? So let's just steady up here. We'll spin the other way.
So you're essentially spinning on the length of your own ship.
On the length of my own ship. And this is really important when you've got something like a tug where we have to come up to something, get close to it, and you spin the other way, please. And maneuver very, very carefully, very quickly. Right? Because this is a combined thrust steering arrangement, you see, these two things work together.
Right, and Tim, I was going to ask you to explain that. So, because I think the steering wheel, for lack of a better word, is fairly, people would intuitively understand what that is. But this, I don't know if they call that That's not a split throttle. That's something else.
This is actually, they're called thrusters.
Thrusters. Okay.
However, our thrusters point directly down. They're actually blades that stick. Let's just head over that way at 6, please. They're actually blades that stick directly in the water, and they spin vertically, and they work like airplane wings. So if we adjust the angle of those airplane wings, we can apply thrust. We get lift the same way you would get in an airplane, or if we change it the other way, we get lift in the other direction.
Right.
However, in order to get the ship to spin, we then increase an additional angle on those airplane wings so that the lift, as it were, instead of being directly in front or behind, moves over to the left or the right, the port or the starboard, as it were, and the bow begins to spin. So our thrust and our direction, adjusting direction, are combined. And you
Okay.
can see this right here. We're going to go speed 8, come up, or rather go to thrust 8. So we are now thrusting forward
Okay.
at not quite maximum, and I'm going to take over all of the thrust to spin the bow. Okay, so let's spin in that direction. Okay, go 8 away. Okay, you're going to roll a little bit to do this. Now all of our movement forward is now turning movement. And I'm just going to knock this back down to 6. And you can steady up and we'll head back to the berth. So as you see, it makes for an extremely maneuverable vessel.
Yeah.
And when we get to the berth, we'll show you another thing that we can do, which is because our thrust and our steering are combined, we can walk the ship sideways.
Oh,
so
wow.
when we get over to the berth, we'll do that.
Fantastic.
Okay? So we'll head back now. So now we're coming into berth, and one of the things you'll see we do is we'll walk the ship sideways into the berth. We'll still have some forward movement, but at the same time we'll slide it into the berth. And we can do that because of the way our propulsion is set up. It's front wheel drive, as it were. Your stern's clear. So right now she has one thruster going ahead, the other thruster going astern, and she's twisting the bow towards the jetty as well. So, the two thrusters being at cross purposes allows the stern to swing in, or drags stern, and the bow, twisting the bow in, brings the bow in towards the jetty at the same time. We'll have to come about 5 feet ahead. You're 20 feet off midships. This is just good. This is good. Just twist the stern in now. Eight feet on the bow, 15 on the stern. And we'll end up coming astern a bunch, but this is good. Just let her come in. Just about to touch. Bow is on. Let the stern fall in. Okay, he's holding you. You can back on the spring. So just two astern on both will be fine. Yeah. And you can let the bow fall out so it aims at the end of the 3 barge. It's coming in nice. Just about to hold you. Okay, nothing astern. Okay, he's holding you. 1 astern. 2 astern. And keep that angle on the bow. Nicely done. Okay, secure stern, bow in. Yeah, squeeze it in hard, like 6 towards or 8 towards. Almost. So it's an interesting little thing here, but it's a bit of a matter of pride for the crew, because we don't have a big crew, that they get the lines, they throw them onto the bollards.
Right.
First throw, right? Or at least very, very close. My bowsman there has in fact thrown it directly onto the bollard a number of times, right? And then he just flips it over. These are professional sailors. You know, handling the lines is what they do day in and day out, and they're quite proud of the fact that they can do these things. You know, there are guys who will take a line like that. They can lasso the bollard on a barge from 20 feet away, just throw it directly onto it. And so it's kind of a matter of pride for them that they can do this just like that. They never miss with a heaving line. They throw the heaving line up 30, 40 feet in the air, get it up on deck. Wow. It's very important to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all stop. We're good to go. You can shut her down. Okay, so we're alongside.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.